Hello, and welcome to my Book Thoughts PowerPoint that I am hastily recording after my owl shift, because I was inspired by Aaron's. So I'm going to try to do this in one take, and then we're going to see how it goes. And so the way that I think I'm going to do this is by doing, let's see if this works. Aha, it does work. Okay, so this is my overview. So you can see I only read 13 books this year, which is like half of what I read last year. It's a thing. Anyway, um, and I listened to about as much like audiobook content as I did pages. These are the series that I read mostly. I got through a lot of One Piece, or what feels like a lot of One Piece. I read some Agatha Christie Poirot, which is like fun, cozy mysteries. Michael Crichton stuff, which is like sci-fi stuff that I know that I like. Um, the Halo books. Well, I read one of them, but I know I'm going to read more. Wax and Wayne, which is like Brandon Sanderson stuff, which I both disliked a lot and then liked way more than I thought I was going to. And also The Singing Hills, which I'll talk about in a second. So, consistencies, which, okay, I mirrored. Here we go. Consistencies. So things that were the same as last year for me. Read a lot of Sanderson, read a lot of Crichton. Um, again, most of my books are like the adventurous mood. Most of my books are fantasy or sci-fi. My average rating was like 4.1, which I think is pretty good. Mostly print. In fact, my ratio of print books was, or my ratio of print books was very consistent, and the average page length was also very consistent. I had the same number of 3.75 star books, which is not like super great, but it's okay. And then I had two 5-star books, which is great. So I'll talk about those in a little bit, but then I'll talk about first some of the things that were deviations from last year. So, like I said, I read half as many books, which I'm not thrilled about. Um, but the books that I did read, I read faster. Um, they were shorter, so I guess that makes sense. I listened to more audiobooks and I read like faster paced books, longer audiobooks. I did less like digital books, which I think is interesting. I have like no nonfiction books from this year, which I have mixed feelings about. Um, More mysterious things because I did those like cozy mysteries, and then not as many like emotional reflective things, which I think is a result of me not having the nonfiction situation. So I made some excellent graphs that I'm very proud of. So let's see. So this is my number of books read, which similarly to last year. So you can see these are the years that I like color coded. Typically like fall tends to be my like biggest reading time. And it was mostly. Um and uh and so some of the dots overlap, so I'm like sorry about that. But and then you can see my star ratings mostly tended to be in the like around 4 range. Um and loaded towards 5 because I try to only read books that I actually like. And typically I just don't read books that I don't like. I have bumped some of my star ratings from previous years down a little bit because I found books that I like more and I want to like shift the scale. So that's the thing. And then on the other side, I have the number of pages that I've read every month, which I think is pretty straightforward. Like I said, fall tends to be my like heavy reading time because I think it's like cozy fall vibes. And then this is minutes listened, which um I think only goes down in like the fall just because I'm reading like reading more. And typically I do minutes listened when I'm on road trips, which I did in like the summer months. So I think that makes sense. Okay. So as far as the actual books that I read, I gave a breakdown of my star ratings so that you would know what it is that I am trying to say about the books with these star ratings. So at the bottom of the scale is 3, which means that I did read it and I thought it was worth reading, but I almost didn't read it. Like I almost didn't finish it. And then it goes fine, good, good, so good, great, great, truly great, and like just could not be better. Um, And so I try to be pretty consistent with this, and sometimes I'll bump things up or down as like time goes on and I have more things to compare it to. Anyway, okay, so with that in mind, you know, keep this in the brain that 3 is really the minimum and 5 is like, you know, like no notes. So, um, the first book that I read in the year was All the Seas of the World, which was fine. It was actually I liked it. Um, I was venting to Aaron at one point that they the prose is very like, and there was that. And you're like it's so expository. And there are very few times in the book where it gets like sensory and emotional, and I really like that typically in books. So for it to be so expository was kind of like a weird thing, and I don't love the prose style. That's why it ranks lower. But as far as the plot and the characters and the content of the book, I actually really liked. I and the expository style is kind of whatever. I think that just really stuck out because another book that I read this year was Heart of the Sun Warrior, which is the second in a series where the first book I loved unexpectedly. Because I'm usually not a fan of like uh love triangles and things like that. And this had a lot of that. But I also thought I it's kind of an unusual fantasy because it takes a lot of things that I don't usually like and makes me like them, which is like wild to me. So it takes like love triangles, and I'm like, oh, I actually like this love triangle. I think it's cool. I There's like a very Mary Sue protagonist who's like very much the chosen one and very much flawless and all this stuff. And I usually hate that. But in this case, I thought she was just like both like innocent and like earnest, but also like in a charming way. And I thought the book was just like very sweet without being like sappy. I mean, it is sappy, but in kind of like a dramatic way that um I think I liked the messaging. I like I 5 stars. I have no notes. I really like it. I know it's not for everybody. I won't be offended if you like read it and don't like it, but it was not very long. Um, and I think it just like did all the things that I was hoping it would do after the first book and like just elevated everything, and I thought it was great. And then similarly, another Asian sort of cultured, like Asian coded like fantasy series very inspired by Asian mythology in a different way than Heart of the Sun Warrior, which is very much almost like the equivalent of like the Chinese pantheon of gods kind of a thing, whereas this is a little bit more like Chinese folklore rather than like sort of like, whereas Heart of the Sun Warrior is like sort of like Zeus style, this is more like there's just like spirits of the woods and stuff like that, which I think is like fun in contrast, that where if you read about them like just by summary, they might seem like they're sort of similar theming, but they're actually pretty different. I also thought that this series, which they're really like a series of novellas, so that's why I combined them into one thing, again took a lot of stuff that I usually don't like and made me love it. And so I was very surprised. I thought the prose was really elevated, whereas in All the Seas of the World or even Heart of the Sun Warrior, I thought the prose was kind of lacking. But this was like the prose was good, the content was good. It was like kind of minimalistic, but also like still gave me more than what I was looking for. So good. Um, so from that like fantasy perspective, awesome. Also fantasy, these are all my like Brandon Sanderson reads of the year, which there were only 3, but okay. So where am I? So Alloy of Law, didn't love it. I think it had a lot of the same ideas as the first Mistborn book. Like I feel like it was still going for that like getting a crew together, we're running a heist kind of thing. That was something I really liked about Mistborn, the Final Empire. But this also lacked like one, don't love the motivation, which is that women are being kidnapped to like literally like breed more magical people, which I think is gross. And like I hated that that was like a big plot motivator. Spoiler alert, sorry. But I just not only was that a big like ick, but then also I just didn't think it was like super charming. I didn't love really any of the characters except for one that I'll get to. Um and I just thought it was kind of whatever. But the second one was 4.25 stars and I thought it was great. And I was like, not only did it go from being like one of my least favorite Brandon Sanderson books, in fact, probably my least favorite Brandon Sanderson book, which is saying something because I really did not love Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. Um, you know, the world building and stuff is always great, but again, kind of taking that for granted, just really did not like Aloe of Law. But Shadows itself, dare I say, might be my favorite Sanderson book. It took everything that I hated about the first book and like either ignored it or changed it or whatever. And a lot of the characters that really irritated me are like a little bit more self-aware now and a little bit more like, oh yeah, maybe I shouldn't just be like so one-dimensional and have that one dimension be so irritating. Because if you're going to be one-dimensional, fine, but make it a dimension that I like. Anyway, um, and so like literally, like it became more Cosmere aware, like the everything just like elevated so exponentially from the first book that I maybe in comparison, I just like it a lot. But even the contrast aside, I just really like Shadows itself, which really surprised me because I wasn't expecting to at all. And then I reread Warbreaker because Tommy was reading it, and I wanted to read it too, because I just wanted to refresh myself because I read it back when I was not as Cosmere aware, and now I am, and I feel like I actually got more out of it, and I think I liked it more the second time, and I liked it the first time. So cool. Again, don't love like some of the things, but like overall, I really like it. And I will say, I love like the cast on the whole. I think Warbreaker is one of the only Sanderson books where I like almost all of the characters. Um, because even the characters I don't like, I like love them later. So Warbreaker's a win for the cast. The magic system I think is one of my absolute favorites. Um, and I think it's great. So, really positive, almost 4 stars. I just feel like it's not quite as strong in some ways as my other 4 star reads, but still good. Um, and then some sci-fi. So I read some Michael Crichton and the Halo book. So Jurassic Park, classic, love the movie. The book, which I know I read at some point, but I did not remember it that clearly. So different from the movie. So the movie is very like, we're gonna like adventure and like jump on cars and like, wow, there's dinosaurs. Wow, cool. Um, and it like is like scary or whatever, just like conceptually, but Jurassic Park, similarly to Crichton's other books, is very grim. It's very dark, it's very grim. It's very like pessimistic. It's very um like critical. It's kind of um like it's kind of savage in a way that I really liked compared to like the sort of like fanciful movie that everybody knows. Um, and so, like I say, it's less action adventure and like more thoughtful and also like a lot more harsh, which I thought was like kind of cool. And there's this whole theming where it's like a thing that he talks about a lot is inherited intellectual wealth is a vice. Like it's something that people are addicted to that does not add value to their life. And I think that's like a really cool hot take on academia and intellectualism, and I think that's fun. Um, Less insightful, but Halo: The Fall of Reach, don't write these books off. These are good books. Unironically, like I read these when I was like in middle school and I was playing the Halo games, and so I was reading these books as they were coming out along with the games. Um, but I unironically like these books, and I compared reading this book to like drinking a beer around a bonfire. Like it's satisfying, feels cool, scratches the itch, right? So yeah, very pleased. I thought I was going to feel like it was very YA, but it's not YA because it doesn't have, I mean, it's like war, it's gory, it's, like it's violent and like the concept is like basically stealing children to like make them super soldiers through what amounts to like torture. And then they watch like all of their friends and like a lot of humanity die. So it's like it is dark, but at the same time the delivery is like it reads like you're playing the game, and I love that vibe because I love the games and I think it's great. And then another Michael Crichton book. This is one of my favorite Crichton books. I know that Michael Crichton has problems. Not everybody loves him. That's fine. I recently, like literally last night, watched a Murphy Napier live stream that I love Murphy Napier. I think she's very cute and like sunny and charming and awesome. She loves this book. I'm glad that she loves this book, but the person she was streaming with doesn't love this book and can't really explain why. I do kind of get it. It is not like a great as a techno thriller. It's more great as like a vibes piece. Um, and if it's not your vibe, it's not your vibe. But I thought it was fun. And so it's a lot of like things that are relevant to me personally because it takes place almost entirely underwater. And like the naval like culture and the like diving details, and it talks a little bit about like physics concepts because all of his books talk about like science something. And so and it talks about like literature and just like all of these things that I love in one book that I thought was like thoughtful and fun and interesting and surprising and cool. And the ending rocks. So yeah. Okay. Death of the Nile. Don't love it. Basically all of the characters suck. Even Poirot, who's like so iconic and charming, really underwhelming. The plot was dumb. It was more of a drama than a mystery because there's no mystery about it. Um, yeah, underwhelming. Almost didn't finish it. Wanted to finish it just to have finished it. Thank God it was short, but on the other hand, One Piece. I've been reading One Piece. I have seen now the manga and the live action and read the manga, seen the live action and the anime all up through the same events. I would say of those three formats, I like the manga the best. And I think that's pretty universally agreed upon by people who have seen them all. The manga is just it's so much more efficient at giving me the parts of the story that I like and the character moments that I like without all the bloat that the anime has and without like the sparsity that the live action has because the live action cuts out so much. And the anime tries to do it, but it takes like 1,000 years to do it. So the manga, awesome. I'm gonna keep reading it. Love it. Also read Murder on the Orient Express. It's a classic. There's movies and plays and all this stuff. There is a Death on the Nile movie. I will not watch it. I don't like the book. I'm not going to like the movie. The movie's bad. The book is bad. Whatever. But Murder on the Orient Express not only was good, even having seen the movies and knowing what like the twist is, like what the answer to the mystery is, but also there's a lot of stuff in the book that I either didn't notice in the movie or wasn't in the movie that I thought were like really cool character moments, and I thought that was fun. Okay, speaking of characters, my least favorite character was from an Agatha Christie book, Lynette. She is the spoiler alert, by the way, but don't read the book. She is the murder victim in Death on the Nile. Well, one of the murder victims. We'll get to that. And she is portrayed as this like I'm perfect and innocent and like I'm the like woman that every woman wants to be. And I'm like, whatever, shut up. You're annoying and entitled and like spoiled and selfish and like you're like a psychopath. And it's just like boggles my mind that we're supposed to feel bad that she is killed. And then people spend the whole book investigating her death. And I'm like, who cares? Good. Everybody had a motive because she sucks. Huh. Anyway, on the other hand, Wayne from the Wax and Wayne, Brandon Sanderson stuff, love it. Oh my gosh. He is so cool. He's got by far the best powers of anybody in the books, or in this series of books. He has um like pretty solid like tragic motivation of like, you know, trying to redeem himself and all this stuff, and love that, you know. He's got that like kind of quirkiness that I think like a lot of the like neurotic Brandon Sanderson characters have, that makes them really charming, and he definitely has that. But it doesn't get old because I think he um like his quirkiness just doesn't get on my nerves as much as other characters. And in fact, I think it's really fun and endearing. Um, he's also like good at stuff outside of his like magical powers, which I think is really cool. And then also like his like sense of humor and stuff, I think just really appeals to me personally. I think he really nails it, and I think he is my favorite Sanderson character of all time. Period. End of story. Um, Other things that I like. Okay, so I will stay over here so you can read this if you like. But definitely my favorite book was Empress of Salt and Fortune. It was my 5-star read for the year. Incredible. It wasn't my only 5-star read, but I think it was a 5-star read that slightly beats out Heart of the Sun Warrior. And this is a quote where they're talking about how it's like red from iron, from swords and shields, and bells that hang from manus bridles. I imagine that black salt stands for something else. So there's so much like sensory symbolism, and just like it's so thoughtful and understated, and just like it just feels both like really reverent and really irreverent, and I just think it's so charming and wonderful and great. I want more of these. There are more of these, and I'm gonna read them all, and I'm gonna pay like actual retail price for these books, which is like something I never do, because I just love them so much. Okay, least favorite book, surprising no one, Death on the Nile, 3 stars. Emotionally, I want to give it less. I think technically, I'll give it a solid 3 stars. I did finish it. I don't hate it. I think the concept is fine. It's just so annoying. And like literally one of the characters at one point is like, but surely none of the women on this boat can have wanted to kill Lynette. And I'm like, oh my God, please. Literally everybody on that boat, around that boat, within 500 miles, and all the readers who have ever read this book all want to kill Lynette. Um, so I rant about it a little bit here. Um, I really like Poirot as like a Sherlock Holmes alternative. I think he's very cozy. I think they usually cut out a lot of the like horror elements of murder mysteries, which I really like because it makes it like actually cozy and not like traumatic. Um, I feel like this book was a little bit like she was writing something either to try out like a new thing that I haven't seen her do in other books, or her editor was like, you need to write another one. And she was like, okay, well, here, that. And okay, whatever. I'm done talking about this book. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Special mention, Shadows itself, which, despite being like only a 4.25, uh, I really enjoyed it. And I think, you know, like this is one of my favorite quotes, where, you know, it's got a lot of irony. It's got like Cosmere awareness. It's got like emotional awareness. It's got like characters that even if they don't have depth, they still have charm. It's good. So I talk about how whereas Emperor's Assault and Fortune really elevated a lot of my favorite fantasy elements. And Death on the Nile really took a lot of my favorite things and just like slammed it on the ground. I think Shadows itself, like really improved and elevated a lot of things that were slammed on the ground in the first book. And I think that's cool. So most improved, good for you. Um, and also not only most improved, but like maybe even in its own right, my favorite Sanderson book, which who would have thought? Um, and so I haven't read the rest of them. I haven't even started reading the other two in this series, but I will, and looking forward to it. Speaking of which, series to continue, things that I will continue to read because I'm very excited about them. Halo. Whoop. I have already almost finished The Flood, this one. And then there's like 30 of these, so I'm not going to read them all. But I think it's nice to throw them in between like other sort of more serious books. Not that they're not serious, but they're still kind of pulpy. Anyway, similarly, dare I say pulpy, but like, is the One Piece manga, which I do also really like. I think part of the thing that I like about One Piece is part of what I like about Brandon Sanderson is there's a lot to talk about. And it's such a good series to like talk about with other people who are into the series. And that's one of my like favorite thing about Sanderson books is like the discussion and the analysis and like, just like even when people like really strongly disagree, there's stuff to actually disagree on, which I think is really cool about Sanderson. I think it's cool about One Piece too. So looking forward to that. And I also have a strong, strong desire to continue the Singing Hills, which is like Empress Salt and Fortune and stuff like that. So I think she's very talented. These books are quite short, and I'm reading them in publishing order, but they can technically be read in any order. And I just think they're beautiful and wonderful and like dreamy and so fun. Also, I'm going to finish the Wax and Wayne books. I think that kind of goes without saying. Obviously, I'm also going to finish Wind and Truth. I'm still on like day like 2 or 3. I kind of fell off of that just because it's so long. But I'm getting there, and I will finish that also in addition to the Wax and Wayne books. I know I'll get to it. I think I stalled out a little bit on Wind and Truth. My bad, but I'm getting there. And then like more Poirot stuff. Again, kind of pulpy, just throwing it in there. And like I think mixing it up with like the mystery and the like really elegant, beautiful fantasy and the more like action, like cinematic fantasy. I think it's all like a good variety. And so that is my reading recap of 2024 and a look forward into my reading for 2025. I hope this video does well because this was my one and only take that I'm going to do of it. But happy 2025. Happy reading. Thank you for listening to my presentation.